Miss Holly Tate, I'm Arthur Harfoot, solicitor to the late Edward Whitfield. Mr. Edward Whit personally chose you, Holly, to witness which of his 3 children proves worthy of inheriting his entire fortune.
One act of kindness placed me in the middle of a billion-pound family war. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his face would end up on the front page of every financial newspaper in the country. All I knew was that it was raining. He was shivering outside a train station and no one else was stopping. So I did. That single decision unraveled a secret 3 grown adults had spent their entire lives trying to bury. My name is Holly Sanderson. I'm 29, and I work double shifts as a nurse in Manchester. Before that October night, my biggest worry was whether I could afford to fix my car before winter. It was just past 10 when I saw him, an old man, maybe 70, curled up in the doorway of a shuttered pharmacy near the station. No blanket, no bag, just a thin coat soaked through by the rain, his hands trembling around nothing. People walked past him as though he wasn't there. I didn't have much, 23 pounds until payday, half a sandwich in my bag, and a scarf I'd knitted myself. I gave him all 3. Then I sat with him for 20 minutes because he seemed to need someone to talk to as much as he needed food. He told me his name was Edward, nothing more. I told him about my mom, my job, and my tiny flat. He listened as though every word mattered. Before I left, he gently caught my wrist and said something that stayed with me. You didn't ask me what I used to be. Most people who help me ask first, so they know how much pity to give. You just gave it. I laughed, assuming he was confused or unwell. I told him to stay warm, wished him luck, and walked away 23 pounds lighter, convinced I'd done something small that either of us would soon forget. I couldn't have been more wrong. That rainy night was the beginning of everything. 6 weeks later, a black car pulled up outside the hospital where I worked. A man in a tailored suit introduced himself as a solicitor representing the estate of Edward Whitfield. I'd never heard the surname before. Then he explained that Edward, the man I'd met outside the station, was Edward Whitfield, founder of Whitfield Industries, a shipping and logistics empire worth an estimated £1.4 billion. 8 months earlier, after being diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer, he had vanished from public life. Neither the press nor his own family knew where he'd gone. Instead, he had spent his final months living anonymously on the streets, testing the people who would one day fight over his fortune. He died 11 days after I met him. In the final handwritten codicil to his will, my name appeared, not as an heir, but as a witness. Edward had instructed that I be present when his 3 children, Marcus, Vivian, and Thomas Whitfield, were read a will that would either unite them or tear them apart. I refused at first. It wasn't my family, my money, or my place. Then the solicitor said something that changed my mind. Mr. Whitfield left explicit instructions. If you don't attend, the entire estate passes to charity. Every last pound. 3 strangers' inheritance now depended on whether I walked into that room. The will was read in a glass-walled boardroom at the top of Whitfield Tower. I'd never felt more out of place. Marcus, the eldest, was cold and calculating. He had run the company's day-to-day operations for the past decade, while the world believed his father was recovering from a stroke. Vivian, the middle child, was a barrister with a razor-sharp tongue, visibly irritated that a stranger in a nurse's cardigan had been given a seat at the table. Thomas, the youngest, said almost nothing. He simply watched me as though I were the answer to a question he couldn't yet solve. Then the solicitor began reading Edward's letter. Edward confessed that he had faked the severity of his stroke, walked away from Whitfield Tower, and spent the final 8 months of his life homeless, sleeping in shelters, church basements, and doorways across the country. He wanted to discover who people really were when stripped of his name, status, and wealth. He had visited each of his children in disguise. Not one of them recognized him. Not one of them stopped to help. According to his letter, only one person had shown him genuine kindness during those 8 months: me. The room fell silent. Marcus accused me of manipulating a dying man. Vivian threatened to challenge the will, arguing diminished capacity. Thomas said nothing. He kept staring at the grainy security photograph the solicitor placed on the table, a picture of me sitting beside his father outside the station, handing him my scarf. Then came the conditions of the inheritance. Edward's fortune would not be divided by blood alone. Each of his children had 30 days to demonstrate through documented and verifiable acts that they had become the kind of person who would help a stranger without expecting anything in return. Anyone who failed would forfeit their share to the others. If all three refused, the entire inheritance would pass to me. In a single moment, I stopped being a witness. I became the greatest threat to everything they believed was already theirs. The next 30 days were brutal. Marcus staged elaborate, camera-ready charity events, performing for the lawyers instead of acting from conviction. Vivian, to everyone's surprise, genuinely seemed to change. She quietly funded a women's shelter without seeking publicity, until a journalist somehow obtained the shelter's records and published a story implying I'd leaked them to damage her reputation. I hadn't, but someone had. Thomas, the quiet one, started appearing at the hospital where I worked. At first, I thought he was there to watch me or intimidate me. Instead, he began volunteering, unpaid, unphotographed. He cleaned wards, helped patients, and spent hours sitting with elderly people who had no visitors. The only thing he asked was that I not tell his siblings. Then everything changed. 3 weeks into the challenge, Marcus's assistant contacted me in secret. Terrified, she handed me a folder. Inside were financial records proving Marcus had known about his father's terminal diagnosis more than a year earlier. While Edward was still alive, Marcus had quietly shifted company assets and liquidated shares, preparing to seize control the moment his father was declared incompetent or died. The stroke story hadn't fooled Marcus. He had been pressuring doctors to declare Edward unfit to run the company months before Edward disappeared. Edward hadn't vanished because he feared dying. He had vanished because he no longer trusted his own son. The smear campaign against Vivian's shelter led back to Marcus's public relations team. They had leaked the story to undermine her before the 30 days were over, clearing his path to the full inheritance. In that moment, I finally understood the truth. The real battle had never been between the Whitfield siblings and me. It was Marcus, prepared to sacrifice his father, his brother, and his sister to claim what he believed was already his. I gave the folder to Vivian and Thomas together, not to the solicitor and not to the press. I wanted them to decide what justice looked like. They confronted Marcus in the same glass-walled boardroom where their father's will had been read. He didn't deny any of it. Instead, he said someone had to keep the company alive while the old man played dress-up as a beggar for attention. There was no apology, no remorse. For the first time in years, Vivian and Thomas stood on the same side. Rather than drag the family through a public scandal, they voted to remove Marcus from the board. His shares were placed into a trust he couldn't access until he completed 2 years of verified, anonymous community service. The same lesson their father had tried to teach, only now it was no longer a choice. As for me, I never wanted the fortune, and I made that clear. But Edward's letter contained one final instruction. He had established a modest trust in my name, enough to complete my nursing qualifications, buy a reliable car, and help my mother with her medical bills. It wasn't enough to make me wealthy. It was enough to change my life. Vivian and Thomas asked if we could stay in touch. Strangely, we did. In the aftermath of grief and scandal, we became the unlikely family Edward had spent his final months searching for. I think about Edward often, a man worth more than £1 billion who feared his children's greed more than his own cancer. In the end, he trusted a stranger with nothing to gain more than the people who stood to inherit everything he had built. Sometimes I think about how easily I could have walked past him that night. The difference between remaining a stranger and becoming part of his family's story was 20 minutes, a half-eaten sandwich, and a scarf I never expected to see again. I think about Marcus too. According to Vivian, he was once the kind of boy who gave his lunch to classmates who had none. Somewhere along the way, success became more important than compassion. I don't know exactly when that changed, only that it happened slowly enough for him not to notice until it was too late. Edward never asked who deserved his fortune. He asked who deserved his trust. That's the question that has stayed with me ever since. Because the way we treat people who seem to have nothing to offer often says more about us than anything we do when the world is watching. And every now and then, when I pass someone sitting alone in the rain, I remember that the smallest act of kindness can change a stranger's life. Sometimes it changes your own. Now, let's put things into perspective. I would love to get your opinion on this. Edward spent his final months in disguise because he couldn't trust that his own money hadn't corrupted the people closest to him, so he trusted a stranger's unscripted kindness instead. If you were Edward, would you have tested your children this way, even knowing it might destroy your family in the process? Is it fair to judge someone's character by how they treat a stranger who appears to have nothing to offer them? Marcus believed he was protecting the company his father built. Does that justify what he did, even a little? If your inheritance depended on proving you'd changed as a person, do you think you'd pass the test? Drop your answer below. I want to know where you'd draw the line.